Hello and welcome or welcome back if you're new here. My name is Luca. Today we have a video that I'm going to be talking about so many books in this video because I'm doing a reading wrap up of April, May, June, July and everything I've read up until now in August, and we are at August 17th. The rest of the books that I'm going to be reading in August I'm just going to include in the next reading wrap up. But I don't have any other time that I can film this, so I couldn't wait until the end of August because I'm going on holiday. So since I have I think 25 books to talk about, I'm going to try to get into more depth with the books that I actually really enjoyed. If I didn't really enjoy the books, I'm not going to go on a tangent, or I'm gonna try not to go on a tangent. And I'm going to be talking about all the books I have in physical form first, and then we'll get on to the Kindle books. So the first book I read that I actually have in a physical copy is In the Likely Event by Rebecca Yarros. She is the author of Fourth Wing and Iron Flame, and I really enjoyed those books, and I also really enjoyed this one. I gave it 4.25 stars, I think. It follows Izzy and Nate, and they meet when they are about to take off on a plane, and within the first 3 minutes the plane goes down. That's all of that's on the back. So they survive the plane crash together, and because of that they're kind of bound together. They have a trauma bond. So they meet again a year after, and they keep meeting up and going on these trips together, and you see them falling in love in the past timeline, and then in the present timeline you see that they've had a falling out and that they don't have any contact anymore. So then they meet again in Afghanistan because Nate works there in the army and Izzy is there for a work trip or something, and Nate is assigned to look after Izzy because Afghanistan is a very dangerous place, and they fall back in love and you see the whole story unwrap. And there's also a few side plots since they're in Afghanistan and it is very dangerous there, so it also has very high stakes for a normal romance book, and I loved that. I loved the fact that there was just something else going on. I read it in I think one sitting or 2 sittings, so I read it very quickly, and there was something in the back that really shocked me and that broke my heart. And just Rebecca Yarros has a very easy and captivating writing style. So I really enjoyed this and I would highly recommend it because I loved both of the characters, so 4.25 stars. Then the next book is one that I was slightly disappointed by because I was just so excited about it. This was one of my most anticipated reads of the year, and that's Tamingseven by Chloe Walsh. This is the 4th book in the Boys of Tommen series, and this couple, they have been hinted at for 4 books, 4 long books. This one came out and it was 440 pages, and they also only get 1 book when all the other couples in the series so far have gotten 2 books. So it just was less spaced out and fleshed out, and the characters just felt less, I don't know, deep. So I was slightly disappointed because I needed a bit more. There was nothing in this book that I would have changed. I just needed more. I wanted this book to be 100 to 200 pages longer, and then I needed another book because the other book in the series, the last one, the 4th one, what is that? Who made this decision? This one is almost this one is 700 something pages, and this couple got 2 of these really big books, so then you just have so much time to get attached to these characters. And I was also very attached to these people. These are Claire and Gypsy, and I loved Claire and I loved Gypsy, but I was just not really satisfied after reading this book because I felt this was very much Gypsy's story and Claire was the biggest side character, but still someone who was only there and had her only storyline revolved around being in love with Gypsy. And I was well, I need a romance. I want 2 characters and them having fully fleshed out lives and storylines. Again, I loved this book and I wouldn't have changed anything. I just needed more so that other things could have happened too. And I also don't feel everything was resolved in this book. It would have been a 5-star if they had gotten 2 books, because I read this in 24 hours and I couldn't put it down and it broke my heart, and I think I also cried, and it was still a 4.25, a 4-star. But I expected a little bit more. The reason that I didn't get any of that is because she has a publishing deal that says only 1 book per couple, when it used to be 2. I was slightly disappointed by that, but I still really liked it, and I love Gypsy, and I love these characters, and I love this universe. And disappointed is not the right word to use, even though I've used it many times. It's just that I needed more. I was not satisfied by everything we got. So that's that, even though I bawled and I reread certain aspects of the book and I really liked it, but it should have been longer and there should have been 2 books. Next, I read Girl Abroad by Elle Kennedy. This book took me a while to get to, and I read, I think, 8 books in between or something, because this one was just quite boring and very slow paced, and not a lot was happening in like the middle of the book. So I think I got like stuck here, and then I read the rest of the book 2 months or like a month and a half later, and I really felt bad about not enjoying this book as much as I thought I was going to, because I love the Off Campus and the Briar U series and universe, and also the Campus Diaries with the Graham Effect. I love those books, and so I want to love everything Elle Kennedy writes, and I just didn't like this one all that much. I think I gave it 2.75 stars, which was surprising to me because I thought I was going to love this, like going off of the synopsis, because it's about a girl from the United States who moves to London for a year because she's going to study abroad there, and when she arrives she realizes that the 3 girls that she was emailing with are actually guys, and those were supposed to be her roommates. So now she's moving in with 3 guys, and she gets romantically involved with one of them, but she also like develops feelings for someone who is in a band and also knows these guys, and so it's kind of become a love triangle with 2 English, no, actually 1 Australian guy and 1 British guy. And I thought that it was going to be so fun, but the subplot line like kind of took over a bit sometimes, because she is supposed to figure out something about a painting, and they acted like that was such an interesting thing, and like everyone around her and just also people with like very high rankings and just status would have been interested enough to help her with a school project and figuring out what a painting is about. And I just was like, it's not that interesting. So I don't believe that everyone would suddenly be like so interested to help her, and everyone, like there were so many guys falling in love with this girl in this book. It's like, I don't really believe that. But it wasn't bad. It just was a bit slow and not a lot was happening, and I just didn't find it all that interesting. So I gave this one 2.75 stars after taking like 2 months to read it. But I did finish it because the last part was interesting. I'm never going to think about this book again. Then I have another book that I didn't really enjoy all that much. I don't know what I rated this one. Okay, I rated this one 3 stars. It's The Dead Romantics by Ashley Poston, and like it wasn't bad, but I got so incredibly bored, and I think this might have been like right book, wrong time, because I just couldn't care less. It's about Florence Day, who is a ghostwriter for a very famous, like, successful writer. So no one knows that she is actually the one writing these books, because the person that she's ghostwriting for passed away, and then she took over and no one knows that. And then she meets Benji, who is her new editor, and they kind of have this one meeting, and then afterwards Benji dies, and Florence is a person who can see ghosts. She has been able to do that since she was very little. And then so when Benji dies, she is able to see him and they fall in love, but she's falling in love with the ghost. All of this is also on the back, like I'm not spoiling anything, but I just didn't really care. I just couldn't be bothered. And I don't really know why, so I think if I had picked it up at a different time, because at this point I didn't really care, and it didn't make me feel anything. And so it was just very much a 3-star book, because it was not bad by any means, but it just didn't do anything for me. So then I have a book that surprisingly did do it for me, called Still Beating by Jennifer Hartman. I didn't realize this when I bought it and when I read it, because I bought this in London and I read it immediately, not knowing that it was a dark romance. And I don't really read dark romances because I am just too soft for all of that. So I started reading this and I was like, oh, this is not happy. And I knew that, but I just like check the trigger warnings when you're going to read this book, because I don't really have anything that triggers me. But I was surprised being like, oh, didn't know we were going to be that graphic. It's definitely not a happy read. It follows Cora and Dean is engaged to Cora's sister, and they have never really liked each other. They have always had like this back and forth banter and pranks and being like, I don't like you and I'm going to make you know it. And then one night they get kidnapped together and they form a trauma bond and they fall in love, and it was very dark, but it was also so incredibly entertaining and fast-paced that I read this so quickly. And it's not a tiny book, it's like 424 pages, and I loved these characters, and they were flawed, don't get me wrong, but they also had the right to be because of what they went through in the first half of the book. You see the aftermath and you see them kind of like finding their way back to each other, because obviously they have been kidnapped together and they went through heinous things, so please check the trigger warnings. But when they come back and they're free again, no one understands what they went through besides each other, so they kind of gravitate towards one another, and I just really liked it. I don't know why, because I usually don't gravitate towards dark romances, like I said, because I don't want the guy to be creepy and like, I don't know, assault or stalk or whatever the girl. I can't handle guys being mean to kids or girls. Like, they can do whatever they want, like, they can kill people and I don't care, but don't be mean to kids or women. And so the guy in this book, Dean, he was like not a bad guy, he was super sweet. I could handle it because it was not the main guy being an asshole. And so I really enjoyed that one. I think I gave it 3.8 stars in the beginning, but then I kept thinking about it, and I also kept going back to certain conversations and certain scenes, so I bumped my rating up to 4 stars. I didn't love everything because I obviously gave it a 3.8 at the beginning, and I think there's something about her writing, Jennifer Hartman's writing, that just doesn't always gel with me 100% because it's sometimes a bit cringy, and I'm going to get more into that in a minute, but I just really liked the characters in the story, and it was just so fast-paced and exactly what I needed at the time, so I bumped it up to 4 stars. Really enjoyed it. I would highly recommend it if you are interested in like a bit of a darker romance where the guy is not a bad guy. So both of these people are very much victims of a bad guy, but they don't do anything themselves. Then I read Then I read Happy Place by Emily Henry. I was so surprised by this book because I read Beach Read I think 2 years ago, and I liked it, but I wasn't blown away. And don't hate me for that because so many people said that Beach Read was her best book. I was like, okay, well, I liked that one, but it wasn't phenomenal to me, so I'm not in a hurry to read the rest. So I didn't read any other Emily Henry book for I think 2 years, and then I picked up this one because it was a perfect summer read, and I read it, and I think I read it in 2 days or something, and I loved it. I gave this one 4.25 stars as well, but I think it's like 4.25, 4.5 stars. It follows Harriet and Wynne, and they have been together since university, and they formed a very tight-knit friend group in university that they have been going on holiday with ever since they graduated. So they went on holiday every year, I think, to someone's, I don't know, beach house, or like someone's holiday house. So they have been together for a while, and they were supposed to get married, but they broke the engagement off, and they have not told their friends. So when they get invited to go on this holiday again, only Harriet was going to go, and then she was going to tell them like that we're actually not together anymore. When she gets there, Wynne is there, and she's like, excuse me, what are you doing here? We have broken up and you are not supposed to be here. And apparently 2 of their friends are going to get married, so they don't want to ruin like their last holiday because the house is being sold, and so they decide they're going to pretend to be together for one more holiday. So obviously it's fake dating, and I just loved how they were able to like talk through all of their problems that broke them up in the first place. Just all of the insecurities and all of the problems felt so incredibly real. Like this was so realistic, and I really liked it. And I also loved the friend group aspect and just everything that they talked about, you know, making friends in university and how it's so easy to like maintain your friendships because you see each other a lot, and then getting older and then just everyone having their own responsibilities and their own lives, and how it's a bit harder to maintain these friendships and like navigating through all of that. And it talked about so many topics that are so incredibly realistic and relevant when you're growing up. And I loved all of the people in this book. I loved Harriet and Wynne. It was just so sweet, and I would highly recommend it, even if you've read another Emily Henry book and didn't really necessarily love it and don't understand the hype around Emily Henry. It's not that I don't understand the hype, because I do, but it was just I was not as blown away by it as the rest of the world. But I did really love this one, so if you have felt the same way, try this book. It was fantastic. Then I unfortunately have a book that I didn't really love in the end. It's called Butcher and Blackbird by Brynne Weaver. I had heard such great things about this book, and everyone was raving about it, and it sounded so fun. It's about 2 serial killers who team up and kill other serial killers and bad guys, and it's a dark rom-com, and I thought that sounded so fun, so I started reading it, and I was really enjoying it up until like I think 60%, and I really liked the guy. He was very much a golden retriever, like happy, flirty serial killer boy, and he was so obsessed with her, and I did think it was a bit insta-lovey like from his side, but it didn't bother me that much. And then if you don't want any spoilers, like it's not a spoiler, but if you don't want to know anything, you can skip to this time frame. But I just really hated that when they got together, suddenly the sunshine golden retriever boy turned into this very dominant alpha male in the spice scenes, and it just freaked me out. Like I did not like the spice scenes, and I disliked them so much, in fact, that I bumped my rating down to like 2.75 stars, because they started having sex quite often, and I just didn't gel with me. But if you don't mind all of that. Like I usually don't mind, but this one came so out of left field that I was like, I don't like this, like I'm not enjoying this. So if you wouldn't mind any of that, then I would still recommend it because it's enjoyable. It just wasn't for me in the end. All right, so I had to open a window because it's disgustingly hot in here. So if the audio is a bit less good, then I'm so sorry, but I'm melting. Then the next book I read was Funny Story by Emily Henry. I was on an Emily Henry kick. We have another book by Emily Henry in this stack because suddenly I just wanted to read all of her books because they're so easy to read. Like she has a very easy writing style. And I enjoyed this one as well. I think I gave it 3.5 stars or 3.75. What I really liked about this book is the fact that these characters reminded me so much of Jess and Nick from New Girl, because the girl was Jess and the guy was Nick. Like he was a bartender, he was very sloppy and messy, and the girl is a librarian and very much like planning and loves, you know, being in control. But then the girl was very pessimistic and the guy was very like sweet and optimistic and social, so they were kind of like turned around, except that for the rest the guy was Nick and the girl was Jess. However, there was something missing for me in this book and I can't really get my head around it because I enjoyed everything. There was nothing that I didn't enjoy. It just didn't make me feel as much as Happy Place or something made me feel. And it was a very fun storyline because both of them were in relationships, and in the beginning of the book they both get broken up with. The girl was actually engaged and she uprooted her entire life to be with the guy she was engaged to, and then they get broken up with because their exes are now dating each other because they were childhood best friends and they left both of these characters for one another. So, assholes, absolutely. But then Daphne, the girl, needs a place to stay, so she moves in with Miles and they kind of like navigate their broken hearts together, and they just try to find themselves after their breakup and stuff, and they become very good friends, and then a romance develops. And what I loved about this book is the fact that we saw a relationship where they were so accepting of each other and like so supportive, and they didn't really have that like that connection in their previous relationships, so I really loved that. However, it just didn't do everything for me. I did really like the guy, Miles. I loved him, and what I also like about Emily Henry's writing is she creates these fictional men. However, they are not perfect, because in this book, I don't know, there was something that was just something slightly unattractive about Miles, even though he was very attractive in like the bigger picture. And then she also did that with people we meet on vacation, because the guy there, she keeps telling like the reader that the guy slouches and so like walks very like slouching, and that's not attractive, but it also makes a character very real and realistic and just, I don't know, lovable. So I love that. However, this book wasn't as good as Happy Place to me, but it was still very enjoyable, and I love this cover. And I'm so happy that I got the American cover. Then I read The War of Winnipeg and Me by Mariana Zapata. This was actually my first Mariana Zapata book. I really enjoyed it. It was, I think, a 4-star to me, and it was very much a slow burn. Like, everyone tells you Mariana Zapata is a slow burn. My god, are they not lying? Because I think they get together here. But I loved that because it was exactly what I needed, because every romance, like I'm not talking about these books specifically because I also read books on my Kindle in between, but some of the romances felt a bit rushed and just not really realistic and just a bit, I don't know, cringy? I don't like the word cringe, but I just don't know how to describe it if I don't use that word. Felt a bit rushed and unrealistic and just, it didn't hit. And then I wanted a book that was going to take a while and that I was like, I needed to feel the pining and the angst and just the tension. And that book did do that for me. It wasn't like my all-time favorite. It wasn't anything groundbreaking, but I did really enjoy it. It's about a girl who works for a football player, I think, like American football. And he has never given her the time of day, but then she quits because she is done with his ass. And he comes back and asks her to marry him, like marriage of convenience, because he needs a green card to be able to stay in the United States. So they get married and she moves in with him, and then obviously like slowly a friendship develops and a romance develops, and it was very fun, so I would highly recommend it. So because I did give it 4 stars. Then I read a book that I really love, and it's called Archer's Voice by Mia Sheridan. I tried a book by Mia Sheridan before, like I think I tried Most of All You, and I didn't get past like the first 100 pages because I just could not be bothered. I just didn't care. But this one I really loved, and every single person on YouTube, Instagram, TikTok that has been telling me to read this book was right, because I did really enjoy it, and I loved the boy in this book. He was so pure and sweet and just innocent, and it was so adorable. This follows Archer and Bree, and Archer is mute, so he doesn't speak, and he is very isolated from the small town that he lives in, and no one really tries to get in contact with him because they also think he's weird and aggressive or something. Like, someone has been spreading lies about this boy. And then Bree comes to town, and she has this interaction with Archer when her dog runs onto his property, and Bree speaks sign language, so she's able to communicate with him, and they strike up friendship and they fall in love. And just the part where they fall in love and like start doing romantic things was so sweet. Like, I was giggling, kicking my feet. It was so incredibly adorable, and so I thought that this was going to be a 5-star book because I loved it. I had like the feeling, you know, the feeling that you get with a 5-star book, and I was kicking my feet and I was giggling, and I was just so in love with Archer, and it was so adorable, so sweet. But then the last, I think 35 or 30% of this book became really cheesy and a bit corny, and so it didn't end up being 5-star, but it did really enjoy this book, and I think I gave it 4.25 or 4.5 stars. But like so many of the books like that are between 4.25 and 4.5, like I regard them at the same exact level on like my rating scale, so something about that does not add up. So there are a few books like Happy Place, this one, Taming-7, In the Likely Event, and then a few books that I still haven't talked about. Those are like all the same to me, but some of them I gave 4.25 stars and others I gave 4.5 stars, so it doesn't really make sense, but I really enjoyed this book. It just, the last 30% is very cheesy, but it's also very heartfelt and a very sweet story, so it's also very sad. But I didn't cry, but it was a sad story. Then I read Just for the Summer by Abby Jimenez. I read this book with 3 of my friends because we're doing like a very small, like 4 or 5 person book club, and we picked this one as the first book. I really enjoyed it. This was the second Abby Jimenez book that I really enjoyed. She is very hit or miss for me because I read the Happy Ever After playlist and I DNF'd it because I loved the first half, and then it just went south very quickly and I just couldn't be bothered. And that has also happened with a book that I'm still reading, so I'm not going to be talking about that one in this video, but she's very hit or miss for me because Yours Truly was fantastic, and I think I gave that one 4.5 stars. I give this one 4 stars. I really enjoyed this book, and if you are like an acts of service girl, the guy in this book has very much acts of service as his love language, and I really enjoyed this. I loved how obsessed the boy was. Like, he was obsessed and he was just like fighting for her and really trying everything in his power to be able to be with her. And also he takes care of his siblings in this book, and guys taking care of their little siblings, that's my kryptonite. Like, I love that in Saving and Redeeming 6, I love that in this book, and there's also another book in this stack that also has that, and I didn't know it, and I love that so much. Like, that is my kryptonite. I don't know, it's not like a single father, but it's like a single sibling, I don't know, and I just adore that trope in a book. This follows Justin and Emma, and they meet on Reddit when he posts something about him having a curse that every single time he dates someone, they break up, and then that person goes on to meet the love of their life. And Emma reacts and he's like, hey, I have that too. So then they start fake dating each other to kind of try to cancel out the curse. Obviously they fall in love, and I really enjoyed it. However, again, it didn't do the 5-star feeling for me, but it was a fantastic summer book and I would highly recommend it. I didn't know that this was the 3rd book in the Part of Your World, Yours Truly, and then this book trilogy or series or interconnected standalones or whatever. So I did recognize the people from Yours Truly, obviously, but I have not read Part of Your World, so if you have read both of those, this one will hit a bit harder, but it doesn't matter. Then I read another book by Jennifer Hartman called Lotus, which is the 2nd book in the Still Beating, like the interconnected standalones, and I really did not like this one as much. I think I gave it 3 stars, but I'm never going to think of this book again because I thought it was super corny and cringy in the writing style and in the storyline, and I just connected with these characters a lot less. Even though this was also like a very entertaining storyline, theoretically, it just didn't end up working for me. It's about a boy, Oliver, who escapes after 22 years in captivity. He was kidnapped when he was 8, and then he comes back after 22 years, and his childhood best friend, Sydney, I had to check the name. When he comes back, she is helping him like adjust to the real world because he missed a lot, obviously, after 22 years. And you kind of figure out what happened and why he was taken hostage, and it was very entertaining, but it just, the writing style made it not work for me. I just felt like when everything was being unraveled, there was a scene that I was rolling my eyes a lot at this book, and I just was so disappointed by that because it's in the same universe as Still Beating, and I really enjoyed that one. And this one was just a bit of a disappointment, but it was still like, I don't regret reading it. It just, I wouldn't necessarily recommend it. And like I was trying to say, when everything was being unraveled, there was this scene where I was like, what? Something happened and things were just too convenient and too good to be true. That made me roll my eyes and be like, really? That's like, obviously it doesn't have to be realistic, but this just felt really out of pocket. So that one was 3 stars, I think. I think I gave it 3.5 at the time, but it's a 3-star book because I just couldn't be bothered. Like, I don't care, I'm never going to think about that book again. Then I read a book that I really, really loved. It's called Swell in This Life by Renee Carlino. She also wrote Before We Were Strangers. I loved this book a lot more than Before We Were Strangers. I thought the storyline was so interesting, and it would have been a 5-star read if it had been longer, because at first I was like, perfect, this is a 330 something whatever page book, exactly what I need. But then I was really loving it and I thought, well, I just need a bit more. But it was still fantastic. I think I gave it 4.5 stars. This book follows Emmeline, and she's trying to become a writer, but then suddenly someone gives her a book, like a new best-selling book from a new emerging author. She starts reading it, and then she realizes one chapter into the book that it's actually a book about her life and her story growing up and like her troubled and traumatic childhood. And she realizes there's only one person that could have read that, and that's her childhood best friend and first love. And so I thought that was so interesting. And then the book kind of alternates between the present and then the past, but the past is told in the book, like the book that she is reading. So you are reading the book that she is reading, and the guy who wrote that book changed some names and some details, but I thought it was so good, and it was just so entertaining. And I thought that was just such a unique storyline, and it was also such a unique way to read the book. I loved it, and I would have given it 5 stars had it been a bit longer, because the end was very rushed, and like I think the first 80%, like the first 90% of the book was very like slowly and drawn out, and we were almost at the end. I was like, not much is resolved, and then everything was resolved in like the last 10 or 15 pages. So that was a bit disappointing to me, but I still really loved it. And Childhood Friends to Lovers is, I love that, and I loved their connection when they were children, and I loved how, you know, they tried to help each other because they were like the very poor children at the end of the very long dirt road, and they just helped each other through so much, and I loved them together, and I loved that book. Then next I have The Unhoneymooners by Christine Lauren. This one was on my June and July TBR. I read quite a few books from that TBR, not everything, but quite a few. This follows Olive and Ethan, and it's very much enemies to lovers and forced proximity and one bed, I don't know. I forgot the other tropes, but it's very much a summer romance, and it was fun. It was very fun. I think I gave it 3.8 stars or something, like almost 4 stars. I really enjoyed it. So Olive's twin sister is getting married to Ethan's younger brother, and at the wedding reception everyone eats the wedding buffet except Olive and Ethan, and everyone gets sick with like very heavy food poisoning. So Olive and Ethan end up going on the honeymoon that was supposed to be for their siblings. Obviously they fall in love there, and it was very fun, and it was very much a rom-com. It was funny, it was very entertaining, and I was pleasantly surprised because I have heard so many people hate on this book, and I actually kind of liked it. So that's that one. Then I have a book that I absolutely loved, and it's called Play Along by Liz Tomford. I have heard that so many people love this book, and it's my favorite book in the series. I think I gave it 4.75 stars because it didn't quite feel like the 5-star, but it's very close. So I might, like, if I keep thinking about it, I might give it a 5-star anyway. But I loved this book. It was so incredibly boy obsessed, and I have not read a book in a very long time where the boy was this obsessed and this in love and this infatuated with a girl. And he is such a golden retriever sunshine boy, and I loved him. He was so sweet, so sensitive, so kind, and I want an Isaiah Rhodes for me. Like, he is what I want. I want him. So this follows Kennedy and Isaiah, and Kennedy is the athletic trainer for the baseball team that Isaiah plays for. And he has always had a crush on her, but then suddenly she comes to work and she is no longer wearing her engagement ring. And then he's like, okay, that's it, I've had my fun, but his one mission is now to get this girl to fall for him. And I loved him. Like, he is groveling. He is trying so hard, and I loved it so much. And so their romance starts when they accidentally get married in Vegas when they were very drunk. They had their reasons, but when they wake up sober, those reasons are not really valid. However, since their place of work is like very unfriendly to Kennedy because she is the only woman working there in like the entire building, they have to pretend to be married to save her job because otherwise she would have been fired. And then Isaiah is kind of using that time of forced proximity to prove to her that he is actually worth a shot. And it was just so incredibly fantastic, and I would highly recommend this one, and I loved it so much. He was so patient and so kind and so sweet because she is not very comfortable with physical affection and human touch and stuff, so he is so incredibly patient with her. And also anything just spice related, he is so incredibly patient, and I loved it so much. This series is the Windy City series by Liz Tomford, and Mile High is the first one. Then we have The Right Move, and then Caught Up. Mile High, I didn't really enjoy that one, so you can skip it because a lot of people try to read that one, don't like it, and then don't go on to the rest of the series, and you have to go on to the rest of the series because this is very much a case of the first one sucked, the rest is fantastic. The Right Move is super good, and then Caught Up is also good, and then this one is fantastic. The Right Move and this one are definitely my favorite, but especially this one. However, you have to read Caught Up because that one is about Isaiah's brother, so you get to know him and Kennedy in this book. This one will just hit a lot harder if you have read this book, so I would recommend like the entire series. You can skip Mile High, but the rest is very good, and this one is definitely my favorite. 4.75 stars. I loved it so much, and Isaiah is like my ideal book boyfriend. Like I have said this 4 times already, but I want him. Then I read People We Meet on Vacation by Emily Henry. Like I said, I was on an Emily Henry kick. I read this one very quickly. I read it in 2 days, I think. I gave it 3.5 stars. I really liked it, but it didn't... I just, like, I keep saying this, but my ratings are feelings. Like, there's no logic in my rating system. Just 3.5 stars. I enjoyed it. It was very fun. It was like fun while it lasted. I'm not going to think about it again, and I really liked it because it's friends to lovers, and I love that trope. And it follows Poppy and Alex, and they meet each other when they are in university, and then they go on a trip every year, and they are very much opposites, but you know, opposites attract. She is very sunshine, outgoing, adventurous, and he is kind of grumpy, like a bit more introverted, and he also loves to travel, but he is like a very calm and just a bit more steady person. You see the past and present timeline, and she convinces him to go on a holiday again one more time when they haven't gone in 2 years, I think, because they had a falling out. Then you realize obviously at the end what the falling out was, and I loved when they got together. Like, I loved the love confession in this, and that was so good to me. However, I didn't feel that way all throughout the book, and a friend of mine started reading this like a year ago or something, and she got, I think, to 60% and then DNF'd it because she just thought it was super boring. And I do understand why she would DNF it in the middle. Obviously I didn't, and I didn't feel the need to do that, but it was a bit slower, and like a lot was happening in the middle, and it could have been a bit shorter, the book, but I still really enjoyed it. Then I read the book that I finished most recently, and I loved this one as well. I read Bride by Ali Hazelwood. Was this absolutely ridiculous? Yes. Did I have the time of my life? Also, yes. I giggled, I kicked my feet, I was having the time of my life. I loved this book, but it's absolutely ridiculous. So this follows Misery, who is a vampire, like not a vampire in the normal sense, but like a vampire. And then it follows Lo, who is an alpha were, not a werewolf, but a were. But it was super enjoyable, and it was so fun, and it's a marriage of convenience. Misery is like brought forth by the vampires to marry the alpha were. That's kind of to initiate a truce and an alliance between the werewolves and the vampires, because you have the werewolves, the vampires, and the humans, because they have been like at war, like in battle, whatever, and they are trying to form an alliance. Not everyone is on board with that alliance, so there's a lot of trouble in this book. I shit you not, I was reading this also very quickly. I think I read it in 2.5 days. And at one point there was plot twist after plot twist, and it was just like bam bam bam, and I did not see any of it coming. Like, I should have seen it coming. However, I am just along for the ride. So I really enjoyed this book, and I gave it 4.5 stars, and I loved the guy in this book. And I was a bit hesitant to go into this because I thought that he was going to be like a very grumpy, mean alpha werewolf. He was not. Like, he was so incredibly sweet, like kind of like a golden retriever, but he also takes care of his younger sister. Like I said, that is my kryptonite, and I didn't know that that was going to be in this book, so I loved that aspect of it. And obviously she also strikes up a friendship and a connection with his younger sister, and she moves in with them, and the chemistry between them was fantastic. I loved it. 4.5 stars. Highly recommend it. Was it ridiculous? Absolutely. Are you going to have the time of your life? Are you going to giggle and kick your feet? Yes. Lo, the alpha were, he was so sweet and so protective and so incredibly in love with her. Like, he was also, again, boy obsessed. So read it. Then we are getting to the Kindle books. I'm just going to scroll all the way down. Okay, so back in April, the first book that I finished was Love Theoretically by Ali Hazelwood. This one is... it's actually not fake dating, because the guy figures out that the girl was fake dating his brother, and so he is like on her case, like, what the fuck is wrong with you? Like, why are you doing this? What are you hiding? It's a whole thing. I liked this book. It was a STEM romance. It was workplace romance. I don't really remember the tropes because, again, this was fun while it lasted. I never thought about this book again. So this one was not my favorite Ali Hazelwood book. It wasn't anything groundbreaking, but I did really enjoy it. I can't even tell you the names of the characters. Like, I couldn't tell you. It was very much classic Ali Hazelwood STEM workplace romance. The girl was very small, the guy was very tall and big, and it was enjoyable, but nothing special. I think I gave that one 3 stars. Then I read Kingdom of the Cursed, which is the second book in the Kingdom of the Wicked trilogy. I don't love this trilogy. The magic system, and it could have been cool, but it was just done in such an easy way. I don't know how to explain it, but it was just written so easily that it just felt ridiculous. Not in the way that this was ridiculous, because this was fantastically enjoyably ridiculous. This one was just annoying to me. The only thing that kept me from DNFing this book is the chemistry between the two characters, but I wouldn't recommend this series. I don't really love it. Then I read Next of Kin by Hannah Bonham Young. I gave that book 3 stars, and going into it I thought that that was going to be such a high rating because everyone raved about Hannah Bonham Young, and I liked this book, but the pacing didn't really make sense to me. It's about 2 people who both have custody of their youngest siblings, and that should have been my kryptonite, but it didn't hit the same for me in this book. Like, that was an aspect that I really enjoyed, but the pacing didn't make sense to me because they didn't like each other, and then suddenly they were all over each other and they were like in love and they were telling each other I love you, and I was like, what? The middle part, where did the middle part go? So that wasn't a fantastic book to me, but I did really enjoy it. And if you like Hannah Bonham Young's writing, then you should definitely give it a try. I am going to read the second book in the series because those characters intrigued me, but this one didn't really do it for me. Does a disappointing 3 stars make any sense? Because I thought it was going to be higher. 3 stars is not a bad rating. Like, I did finish it, I just wasn't invested in like the second half anymore, and again, I'm never going to think about it after reading it. So that's that one. Then I have The Dixon Rule by Elle Kennedy. I gave this one 3.75 stars. This is actually, I think, the first book in the entire Off-Campus by You, the Campus Diaries universe that I rated below 4 stars. And don't get me wrong, I really enjoyed it, so it's like a 3.75, 4 stars, but I just couldn't connect to these characters as much as I connected to lots of other characters in this universe. It was fake dating, so I really did enjoy that, and it was friends with benefits and forced proximity because they are neighbors, and he helps her like kind of scare off her abusive ex-boyfriend, and she helps him to make his ex-girlfriend jealous. And I obviously, all throughout the book, they are falling in love and realizing that they actually want to be with each other, and he doesn't want to be with his ex-girlfriend anymore, and blah blah blah. I really enjoyed it, and I still would recommend it, but it wasn't my favorite. But I do love this entire world, and I am so impatiently waiting for the books from the other kids from the Off-Campus series and stuff to come out, because in this book they hinted at a story that's going to be about Logan and Grace's daughter, and I want those so badly. Then I read Springtide by Kai Stevens. I gave this one 3 stars, 3.5 stars. I couldn't tell you what this book was about in like any depth. I know the characters' names are Harper and Luca, and he is very much a grump and she's a sunshine girl, and he injures himself playing American football at university, and Harper is actually studying to become a sports doctor, like she's studying sports medicine, so she is helping him with his injury, like without their coaches and stuff knowing anything about it, and he helps her by fake dating her to make another guy that she has a crush on jealous and stuff. So it was very cliche, like it was very much a cliche college romance, but I still really enjoyed it. I am going to finish that series, I think, but it wasn't anything special to me. Like, I gave it 3.5 stars. Then I read The Rule Book by Sarah Adams, which is the second book in the cheat sheet duology. I really enjoyed this one. It was very cheesy, and that's always something I have with Sarah Adams books, is they are very cheesy and very rom-com-y. And that's not a bad thing, but I have to be in the mood for it. And I gave this one 3 stars. It's about Derek and Nora. Those names just came from the back of my brain, like they had to be bumped to the front. It's about Derek and Nora, and they dated in college, and they were like very serious, and they were very in love. And then they broke up, or like she broke up with him, and he went on to become an NFL player, and she became an sports agent. And so now 7 years later, she has been assigned to become his new agent. He is like not excited about any of that, so he is kind of being a grump to her and like kind of trying to drive her away, and she's not having it. She's like, I will become your agent, this is my big break, like don't get in the way of this. So she is kind of putting up with him, and they obviously become friends again and then fall in love, and it was a second chance romance. It was a good second chance romance, and I like the story. Sarah Adams's writing is sometimes a bit too cheesy for me, but I did really enjoy it, so I gave it 3 stars. And then I read Flawless, which is the first book in the Chestnut Springs series, because I used to be a horse girl. Like, I did horseback riding for like I think 13 years or something, and I really loved it, and I loved I don't know if you know that, like Heartland. I read those books, I watched that show, and I was completely obsessed with the cowboy yeehaw whatever thing. And for some reason, when everyone started talking about Chestnut Springs, I was not intrigued, like at all, and I don't know why, because I am a horse girl at heart, so I don't know why the cowboy yeehaw thing didn't intrigue me. But I read this book anyway, because I had it on my Kindle, and it was one of the only books I had downloaded when I was on holiday and I couldn't download anything else. So I gave this one 3.75 stars. I really enjoyed it. It wasn't my favorite, but I am really excited to continue the series. It follows Rhett and Ethan, and Rhett is a bull rider, and that's like fun in theory to me, but in reality, like I would cry every single time someone would try to, I don't know, the bulls. I just feel bad for the bulls. But anyway, he was a bull rider, and he is a very famous and successful bull rider, and Summer is his agent's daughter, I think, and she is assigned to him to kind of help him clean up his image and stuff, and they fall in love. She moves in with him and his family and stuff, and it's very opposites attract. It was again very fun to go along with. I don't think I'm going to be thinking about this book very often, but I am really intrigued by the rest of the series, so I would highly recommend it. I can't say too much about the series yet, but I am so incredibly excited for Beau's book, which I think is the 5th book, and then also Theo's book, which I think is the 3rd book. Like, I am so excited for those 2 books, and I can't wait to read them. And that was actually the final book, so we have gotten through all of the books that I wanted to talk about. I would say that these books, Taming Seven, In the Likely Event, Happy Place, Archer's Voice, Swear on This Life, Play Along, and Bride, were definitely my favourites out of all of the books that I've read in the past couple of months. These were all in the 4.25 to 4.75 rating range. I have not had a 5-star read since February. I have only had 2 5-star reads this year, and I'm wondering if I'm just being too picky and like being too stingy and nitpicky with my ratings, but I just haven't had that feeling. And like, all of these books came very close, but not completely, but I did love all of them. These are like a few of my absolute favorite books. And so I am very happy about all of the books that I've read. There were a few kind of misses, but not anything too bad. And I'm so excited to see what my next 5-star read, like my next obsession, is going to be. But anyway, thank you for watching this video if you watched all the way to this point. I hope you enjoyed, and I hope you maybe got some recommendations out of this, and I will hopefully see you in my next video very soon. Alright, so I just wanted to pop in here and say that all throughout editing, I hated the way I looked in this video for like 90% of it. So I just wanted to come in here and say that because I was debating filming it again, but I went through all that trouble and I don't want to film it again, and I also don't want to film again every single time that I don't like the way I look on camera. And also, it's 2 days later and I'm like wearing the exact same amount of no makeup, and I went to the hairdresser and now I feel fantastic. So I hated the way my hair looked all throughout this video, and I just wanted you to know that everyone has those days and you don't have to feel embarrassed for not feeling like you're looking your best, and you can still put it on the internet, you can still go outside, and you can still just do whatever you want to do, even if you don't feel like you're looking your best and you don't feel yourself. And you just don't have to cover yourself up or hide yourself every single time that you don't feel like you look good enough. So I just wanted to come in here and say that, and I hope that if any of you know the feeling or you feel the same way, that you'll probably feel better tomorrow. And that's it. Okay.